the question is about how do we link the device at Seaside Park to the device in Jersey. The only thing I can say about how we do that is through evidence and analysis, and I can't go beyond that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, folks.
That are standing behind me that are in uniform, I say this, they are amongst the greatest American heroes we have. As Senator Menendez said so clearly, when a crisis happens in our country, whether it be a natural disaster like Sandy or a terrorist act or unfortunate fires with new chemicals that pose new hazards and new dangers, these are the men that respond without hesitation, equivocation. They go into a dangerous situation to protect lives, to protect property, and to secure the homeland. These are the heroes that we are delivering for today to make sure that they have the manpower and woman power necessary to get the job done. Finally, I want to introduce an ally, a friend, somebody who when I was a mayor, I relied on so much, somebody who stands incredibly tall, not just because of his height and stature, but because of the service he renders. I want to bring my friend, Congressman Sirius, to the microphone.
Thank you, Senator. You know, you have here 3 former mayors, plus Mayor Bowich. We know firsthand how important these grants are to the community. So when we get an application notice, we go to work on it right away because we know what it means to a community to have 36 new firemen. We know what it means to the mayor to say, I'm going to be able to get a full group of firemen so we can defend this community. Unfortunately today, I was going to say it's a great day for Elizabeth. We had an incident in Elizabeth that showed that it can change in an instance. I was mayor of West New York when 9/11 happened. I remember the chaos. I remember going down to the ferry. I remember the ferry not going into the city but coming back from the city. But we had just about every community sent people trying to get into New York. The tunnel was closed. What's happened since then is that we have made so much better coordination between the communities. And it's a result of what we have today. We already caught one of the individuals. So in 15 years, we have come a long way. And just to give you an example, when the bomb went off down the shore, metropolitan area was notified immediately that we had something happen in New Jersey. So I want to congratulate all the people that keep us safe. And I certainly want to congratulate the mayor on a great job. And certainly 36 new firemen for Elizabeth. It's not just for Elizabeth, it's for all those communities that are around Elizabeth that they respond when there's a need. And I want to certainly commend my senators. You know, this is a team effort. And believe me when I tell you, sitting in a place in Washington, I look at 2 senators, and I am happy to say we have 2 of the best senators in this country. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Congressman. I appreciate all the work that Congressman Sirius did on this grant as well. I also want to thank Susan McCune and my staff who wrote the grant. All too often she gets forgotten, but I thank her. And I want to recognize Mike Guarino and Steve McConnell, the president of the FMBA here, and the superior officers. Thank you. And now we'll open the floor to any questions. If you would like your question addressed to a senator or a congressman, gladly throw it out there. Yes, sir.
Mayor, just in a general sense, understanding that people who do these acts like this guy this morning and over the weekend can come from anywhere, give me a little sense of what goes through your mind, realizing that this is one of your own, this is one of your citizens involved in this who would attempt to claim lives in this kind of way.
You know, all of us are mayors, the 3 members in the federal government and I, and we spend every day trying to make life better for the citizens of our community and enhancing their availability to grow and mature. And here, when someone who lives among you tries to take away the sanctity of human life, it becomes really difficult, not only on behalf of the government, but on behalf of all of the citizens of our community. We just have to work harder in making sure that people in our city understand that we're going to move forward. The train stations are open, the schools are open, the business communities are open, And I hope everybody that does things on a Monday in September continues to do what they would normally do on any Monday in September.
What's it been like in town? Give people a sense of what the last 24 hours have been like.
You know, the city of Elizabeth has gone through a difficult time over the last few hours, but it's because of the responsibility of law enforcement, the FBI, the prosecutor's office, the state police, the sheriff's office, where we quickly apprehended this man in Linden. And after the two senators and the congressman and I and Al Fayella and the county manager were briefed by the FBI, the investigation continues. Mr. Gallagher gave us a briefing that talks about how they're moving forward, but also talks about it as really early in the investigation to see if there's anyone else involved. The 5 gentlemen that were taken into custody at the Verrazano Bridge as of this time have not been charged with anything. There's still a questioning going on. Whether they will be charged or not, we were informed that's the responsibility of the NYPD and the New York FBI office. And if they are charged, we will be informed. There's a belief that the investigation is continuing and ongoing, and whether there are more suspects at hand or to be discovered remains part of the investigation. Pardon? As of this time, no. The family. The special agent still here? Special Agent Gallagher, do you want to answer any questions, or would you rather me keep doing this? Come on over here, Special Agent Tim Gallagher, in charge of the Newark Field office here in the state of New Jersey. Special Agent?
Thank you, Congressman. On Saturday morning, as you all know, there was an explosion in a road race in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. Since then, law enforcement at the federal level, the local level, the state level has worked tirelessly around the clock to develop leads in this case. Since that time, we developed information which led us to focus on an individual, Mr. Rahami, Ahmad Rahami. He was our focal point based upon evidence developed by the New York JTTF, as well as the JTTF in the state of New Jersey. As we'll get into in a few minutes here, there was a confrontation earlier today, which Prosecutor Park will get into. I stress that this is very early in a very complicated investigation. The FBI and the Union County Prosecutor's Office, as well as the Linden Police, and all of our partners continue to work to try and tie any associations to this individual to bring them to justice. I will now turn it over to Prosecutor Park.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Grace Park, the Union County Prosecutor.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to give some information on our very preliminary investigation. At around 10:45 this morning, 2 Linden police officers confronted Rahami in Linden on East Elizabeth Street. They encountered him outside a local bar, and there was an exchange of gunfire, and he was then taken to custody. 2 of the officers that were in exchange with him ultimately are not critical in terms of injuries. They did exchange gunfire. 1 officer was struck in the abdomen, but into his bulletproof vest. The other had some glass that struck his forehead, but not into his skull. So we're really grateful that the Linden police officers who confronted Rahami are not in critical condition at all. My understanding is that the suspect is currently undergoing surgery, but unfortunately I don't have any further details on his condition. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, yes, he was shot. My understanding is that he was shot at least in the leg, but I don't have any further details on that. I can't elaborate further on the details. I just know that they had some information that he'd be in the area, and they confronted him. Unfortunately, that's under investigation at this point.
Rahami's family and the city here. Can someone address what, if anything, the city knew about this man and his family and problems there may have been? And was he on the radar of law enforcement?
I can't really discuss that at this time.
The suspect was not on the radar of local law enforcement, but the fried chicken place that they owned, the family owned, we had some code enforcement problems and noise complaints. When they opened in 2002, they ran a business for 24 hours. Neighborhood complaints regarding a congregation of people as well as noise sought the city council in 2009 in order to pass an ordinance closing that restaurant at 10 o'clock in the evening. The police had to enforce that ordinance, at which time the suspect's father and two brothers took the city of Elizabeth to court, and in October of 2012, the courts ruled in the city's favor that we were capable of closing that facility at 10 o'clock in the evening as a quality of life issue.
Either the family's restaurant or that home, are those investigations, are those sites still active, and what can you tell residents who live near there?
Well, I can tell you the restaurant's closed. Regarding the people who live here, the town is extremely safe. The businesses are open. The trains are running. The schools are open. People need to continue and move on with their daily lives.
Well, here's my view. When I say terrorism, anyone who floats a bomb in any place that can harm individuals, to me that's an act of terrorism. Now, whether that terrorism is self-inspired, whether that terrorism is coordinated with others, remains to be seen. But I think that anyone who takes a bomb and ultimately puts it in a public place I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand you were looking to do harm to others for whatever your purpose were. To me, that's an essence of terrorism. Now, we think of terrorism only as Al-Qaeda and ISIS and whatnot, but to me, this in and of itself is an act of terrorism. We'll find out as the investigation continues whether it's coordinated, inspired, led with others, how it developed, whether the person developed any views or tendencies inspired by other international terror groups. But in and of itself, from my perspective, it's an act of terrorism. Bueno, simplemente, primero estamos aquí hoy para darle $5 millones a la ciudad de Elizabeth con el propósito de emplear 36 bomberos nuevos, y vemos en estos últimos días la importancia que es la policía y los bomberos locales que actualmente responden cuando hay una emergencia. Y por eso he dicho por mucho tiempo con el senador Booker y el congresista Cires que actualmente estos fondos que nosotros abogamos son muy importantes, y ahora vemos estos incidentes donde es la policía local, los bomberos locales que están respondiendo. Ahora, con referencia a este incidente, mi opinión personal, como alguien que ha abogado en estos temas, es que la actuación de cualquier persona, poner una bomba en un lugar público con el propósito de dañar o matar a otras personas, asimismo, eso esencialmente es un acto de terrorismo. Que no sabemos si eso es un acto de terrorismo inspirado por otros grupos internacionales, no sabemos si fue coordinado con otros. Eso, la investigación se va a saber en los días adelante. Pero para mí, cualquier acto de una persona, tomar una bomba, ponerla en un lugar para tomar vidas de otros, es un acto de terrorismo. El alcalde Bowich ha hecho muy claro que todos los esfuerzos se han llevado para inspeccionar los vecindarios, han inspeccionado todos los lugares públicos hasta este momento para asegurar que no hay otras bombas, otras amenazas a los ciudadanos. Las escuelas están abiertas, la ciudad está operando, los negocios están abiertos, los ferrocarriles están abiertos, en fin, estamos en nuestra vida. Y eso es lo que tenemos que hacer, porque el terrorismo quiere cohibir la manera en que nosotros vivimos. Y cuando ellos pueden hacer eso, ganan el día. Nosotros tenemos que continuar nuestra vida para asegurar que eso no es la realidad.
I think everyone has to be diligent, and the saying that if you see something, say something is the new normal, and if people see something, they should clearly call law enforcement, like those two gentlemen who saw that backpack in the garbage can. After they saw what was in it, they went to law enforcement, and we were able to resolve this without any injuries to any personnel and capture the suspect. I've been with many of you since 10 o'clock last night. I'm not so sure there's any more questions we can answer at this time. We thank you for coming and celebrating with us a SAFER grant, and hopefully the FBI, the state police, the Union County prosecutors, and law enforcement will continue the investigation in seeking a resolution to the issues that occurred over the last 24 hours. Thank you for being here.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on the press conference out of Elizabeth, New Jersey. We do have another press conference that we are awaiting in New York City at the NYPD headquarters. Let's actually pull that up on the screen right now.
Yeah, so it should be about, 10 more minutes?
10 minutes away, yep.
Decisions to take terrorists off the battlefield. And I've laid out a comprehensive plan to meet the evolving nature of this threat and take the fight to ISIS everywhere they threaten us, including online. I'm grateful to have support and advice from a wide range of bipartisan national security leaders who've worked with both Democratic and Republican presidents. When we met together earlier this month in New York, one of the points they emphasized was the need to support state and local law enforcement who act as our first line of defense, making sure they have the resources, the training, and intelligence they need to effectively prevent and respond to terror attacks. And this weekend's events underscored how important that is. We should also launch an intelligence surge to help identify and thwart attacks before they can be carried out. We need to work more closely with Silicon Valley and other partners to counter terrorist propaganda and recruitment efforts online. And it is crucial that we continue to build up trust between law enforcement and Muslim American communities. In the Middle East, we have to smash ISIS's strongholds with an accelerated coalition air campaign, more support for Arab and Kurdish forces on the ground, and intense diplomatic efforts in Syria, Iraq, and across the region. Working closely with our allies and partners to keep us safe must be the top priority for our next Commander-in-Chief. Later today, I'll discuss the threat from terrorism with President Sisi of Egypt and other world leaders. Most of all, I want to say this to my fellow Americans. Let us be vigilant, but not afraid. Before, if you see something or you hear something, report it immediately to local law enforcement authorities. Meet this new danger with the same courage and vigilance. We choose resolve, not fear. We will not turn on each other or undermine our values. We'll stand together because we are stronger together in the face of this threat and every other challenge. I'd be glad to take some questions.
The person of interest in this case is an Afghan immigrant, now a U.S. citizen. What do you say to voters who may see this as a reason to consider supporting Trump's approach to terror and immigration?
Well, it is true that a suspect of interest has been identified, and we need to do everything we can to support law enforcement as they track him down to determine what role, if any, he played in these events. But let us remember, there are millions and millions of naturalized citizens in America from all over the world. There are millions of law-abiding, peaceful Muslim Americans. This is the kind of challenge that law enforcement can be and is prepared to address, namely going after anyone who would threaten the United States. So I am absolutely in favor of and have long been an advocate for tough vetting for making sure that we don't let people into this country, and not just people who come here to settle, but we need a better visa system. Let's remember what happened on 9/11. These were not refugees who got into airplanes and attacked our city and our country. So let's not get diverted and distracted by the kind of campaign rhetoric we hear coming from the other side. This is a serious challenge. We are well equipped to meet it, and we can do so in keeping with smart law enforcement, good intelligence, and in concert with our values.
Secretary Clinton, the White House has labeled these lone wolf attacks a top concern, and given these weekend's events, what more specifically should be done, and what would you do specifically beyond what President Obama has done? Is the current plan enough?
Monica, I think that the lone wolf problem is one that we have to invest more time and more resources into combating. When I met with the distinguished group of national security experts, as I said, both Democratic and Republican administration experiences, they made a very strong point that the recruitment and radicalization that goes on online has to be much more vigorously intercepted and prevented. I have been saying this for quite some time, and I believe it's an important part of our strategy. The other point they made is that the recruiters for ISIS and these other terrorist groups look for people who online demonstrate the mental profile, the level of paranoia, the level of delusion, the level of disappointment that then is exploited by quite able terrorist recruiters. So we've got to do a much more intensive effort, and that's why I mentioned Silicon Valley in my remarks, not only to take down terrorist propaganda, but to do everything we can to intercept and prevent radicalization and recruitment. And I think we are at the beginning of that, but there's much more we need to do, and the government cannot do this without the close participation of tech companies and experts online who can give us the tools and lead us to those who are attempting to promote attacks like we've seen.
Hi.
Hey, Jennifer.
Are you concerned that this weekend's attacks or potential incidents in the coming weeks might be an attempt by ISIS or ISIS sympathizers or really any other group, maybe the Russians, to influence the presidential race in some way and presumably try to drive votes to Donald Trump, who is, as you've said before, widely seen as perhaps being somebody who they would be more willing to or see as an easier person to be against?
Well, Jennifer, I don't want to speculate, but here's what we know. And I think it's important for voters to hear this and weigh it in making their choice in November. We know that a lot of the rhetoric we've heard from Donald Trump has been seized on by terrorists, in particular ISIS, because they are looking to make this into a war against Islam. Rather than a war against jihadists, violent terrorists, people who number in the maybe tens of thousands, not the tens of millions, they want to use that to recruit more fighters to their cause by turning it into a religious conflict. That's why I've been very clear. We're going after the bad guys, and we're going to get them. But we're not going to go after an entire religion and give ISIS exactly what it's wanting in order for them to enhance their positions. Secondly, we know that Donald Trump's comments have been used online for recruitment of terrorists. We've heard that from former CIA Director Michael Hayden, who made it a very clear point when he said Donald Trump is being used as a recruiting sergeant for the terrorists. We also know from the former head of our counterterrorism center, Matt Olson, that the kinds of rhetoric and language that Mr. Trump has used is giving aid and comfort to our adversaries. Now look, as I said in my remarks, I'm the only candidate in this race who's been part of the hard decisions to take terrorists off the battlefield. What does that mean? I was part of the national security team that worked with President Obama to develop strategies to fight the terrorists. Sometimes that involved direct kinetic action. Sometimes that involved working with allies and partners. Sometimes that involved capture. I won't get into classified information, but I have sat at that table in the Situation Room. I've analyzed the threats. I've contributed to actions that have neutralized our enemies. I know how to do this, and I understand how we don't want this to get even bigger than it already is. So we're going to stay focused on what will work and how we deploy a strategy that will protect America, work with our allies and partners to take ISIS down, and have a strong counter-terrorism effort online in order to try to defeat the ideology that stands behind these terrorist attacks.
Secretary Clinton, as you know, Donald Trump has had a lot to say about your record on this issue over the weekend. Here's one example. Under the leadership of Obama and Clinton, Americans have experienced more attacks at home than victories abroad. Time to change the playbook. What's your reaction to that characterization?
Well, it's like so much else he says. It's not grounded in fact. It's meant to make some kind of demagogic point. And the facts are pretty clear that we still have challenges. That's what I have been talking about throughout this campaign. I am prepared to, ready to actually take on those challenges, not engage in a lot of irresponsible, reckless rhetoric, but to do the hard work, as I've done before, to put into place the strategies for local and state law enforcement, for an intelligence surge, for the kind of preventive actions that we need to take here at home, and to intensify our efforts to defeat ISIS. You don't hear a plan from him. He keeps saying he has a secret plan. Well, the secret is he has no plan. So let's focus on what we really can do, and what I've laid out is a path forward that will keep us safer, protect our country, and go after the terrorists to finally destroy them. So, thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, everybody, that was Hillary Clinton earlier today.